Hello there, class. This is Dan Stevens, your instructor for fiscal management, and this is for the fall semester 2018. Yeah, the semester that is having all kinds of issues with getting textbooks. Well, I'm sorry, that's kind of out of my control. Um, but what can I say? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to record some video for you, at least try to supplement some of this so we can get on with the course. Okay, so first of all, we're in the module that deals with accounting. What is that? Is that one or two? Whatever it is, it's pertaining to accounting. Um, I want to at least go over some of the main topics, starting with funds. This is a really important concept in fiscal management. Now, keep in mind, I'm not actually looking to teach you how to become an accountant. My level of expertise is not adequate for that task. Um, plus, what I'm looking to do is I'm giving you a broad overview, enough to be dangerous, right? No, so whenever you go into a public agency, you'll have a better understanding of how everything works, particularly with funding. So let's start there. First of all, funds. As I put on my module slide, hey, dude, I'm a little short of funds. Okay, that's an oversimplified version of this. Funds actually serve a real, a specific purpose in public finance. They actually, whenever your politicians up in Tallahassee or up in Washington, whenever they, allocate money to a particular purpose, there are strings attached. That's how they actually keep control over what this money's been spent on. For example, they might have money allocated to Links, our regional, public transportation agency, but they actually say, okay, they stipulate this is going to be money for capital improvements, like buying new equipment, but not for operations. So no paying salaries for bus drivers or fuel or even maintenance. This is just so we expand our system. So that's what they would do. They would actually put it in a particular fund, so that way you can kind of keep track of it. Now, I actually put on my slides in our module, an overview of how my wife and I actually do our personal finances. I have my main account, has all the money in it. Well, whatever. And then I say, okay, I'm going to earmark some for home repairs. I'm going to earmark some for vacations, some for bills, whatever. In that way, this money is not to be spent in that particular area. So that way, you keep track of it. Um, Noting that my particular forte deals with transportation, as I just told you my story about links, um, I'm very familiar with transportation documents. I know a lot of people, are not, real excited about transportation issues. You ever see the Mission Impossible movie, Tom Cruise, and he's a transportation planner, and the wife rolls her eyes. If he was only saving the world, that'd be great. Whatever. Anyway, well, so here's the thing. I actually use um, transportation documents to demonstrate a lot of my points, as you'll see through the semester. For example, what is this? A real world use of funds. That's the particular slide name I'm going to be referring to. And I use the Florida Department of Transportation I-4 Ultimate Improvements document. And now here's the thing, I actually have it linked. If you go online, you go to the web courses portal, you can actually click on that, and it'll download a PDF so you can actually see this a lot better. As it is right now, as it's just a screen print, it's kind of hard to see the small font. But if you blow it up, you can actually see, each of the categories, each of the columns comes out of a different pot of money. Now, at the end of the day, they're looking to see how much is this highway going to cost and where are we going to get the money from. So that's where funds come in. That's where fund accounting comes in. Okay, we've got some that's coming in from the OOCEA fund, some from the Strategic Corridor Fund, different legislation that actually creates these funds, some from the district dedicated revenue, that comes out of the gas taxes, and so that way Orange County drivers, Osceola County drivers, Seminole County drivers, they fill up their tank, that money comes back to them in terms of DDR funds. So that, is in its own column. Bridge maintenance funding, so the planners for the I-4 project would say, okay, all the bridges that are going to be repaired or replaced or whatever for the I-4 project, we're going to spend that money on the bridges. The other money we're going to spend on the roadway, paving it. See what I'm talking about? So anyway, check that out and kind of be able to wrap your head around that. Now, I want to point out we've got with governmental funds, I'm referring to my book over this way. You've got governmental funds, which are pretty self-explanatory, proprietary funds, more business, and then fiduciary funds. And so I'll kind of explain each one of these. Again, I do have a slide for each one. They're not necessarily always self-explanatory, but bear with me here. The general fund, I've actually got a picture of like a catch-all drawer. This is where most of your government spending occurs, and so that is the one fund that kind of has everything that the rest of them do not have, specifically earmarked for a particular purpose. Special revenue fund, just like it says, like gas taxes, whatever, those, if there's a special purpose, those are actually created. Now, keep in mind, special revenue fund is not the fund name. This is a description of that kind of a fund. The gas tax fund, like I said, when I was talking about the I-4 document to which I referred earlier, the gas tax fund, the bridge fund, the whatever, those are special revenue funds. Let me see here. Debt services funds. What debt services? Well, governments actually borrow money. A lot of times you actually you buy a bond for $1,000, and you give them your $1,000. They're going to turn around and give you back 1,000 plus some. The interest for using that, which as you'll see later in the course, could be tax-free money. Woohoo! So debt services. So what it does is it sets aside money to pay off those debts. So that way they don't get in trouble. Capital projects funds. Capital means stuff, equipment, whatever. In this case, capital projects typically are huge, large scale projects, bridges, stadiums, whatever, schools that you have to finance over time, and so you have to set aside a little bit of money, and that's why you have a special fund for that. Let's see here. Just so you know, some of these funds are heavily restricted in terms, the law. You can or cannot borrow against them, whatever. Some of them are not. They're just being fiscally responsible. Hey, this is how we're going to be able to save enough money to buy that soccer stadium or whatever. We're going to set it aside and in this particular fund. Others, you cannot do that. There's pretty stringent laws on that. So as far as my field, transportation, it's a big pot of money, and people are always trying to rob it. So that's always on the table, on the legislative priorities for all these different transportation-related organizations is protect our money. So that way your congressmen don't try and dip in there. Yeah, we'll pay you back next year. Whatever, that never happens. Permanent funds. It's the next governmental type of fund. I actually have looks like a park bench. It could be in a cemetery. Now, for those of you that don't know, I used to be the sole park planner for Osceola County, and we would constantly get requests from the citizenry saying, hey, I want to, my wife of 50 years just passed away, and I want to have the Parks and Rec department, build a bench, and I'll put up the initial, $2,000 for it. And then I want you guys to maintain it forever, in perpetuity. By the way, it's a actual term there. Forever is a very long time. What we found out was, this you're obligating your agency to do landscaping and painting and maintenance and things like that on something that $2,000 might disappear over the next 5 or 10 years. Then all of a sudden now it's an obligation. Not to be cold, but these are things that you want to consider. Now, when it says permanent funds, you typically would set aside that amount of money. You would, purchase the bench, or you would, whatever, and then you would use the money that you make on that, as far as interest, to help with the, offset the upkeep and the maintenance over time. So you just need to weigh that out. Whenever you're out there as an administrator, make sure you're doing your math right. Let's see here, propriety funds. Okay, now proprietary funds. This is an enterprise. These are when a government agency acts or functions sort of as a business. That's a different type of a fund. For example, what do I have here? OUC. I use OUC like the utility companies. Orlando Utilities Commission. Now, how does that work as a business? Well, they charge money for electricity. They make electricity, solar power, coal fire plant, whatever, and then they sell it back to you, and that's how they do make profit, and they turn that profit back into money making revenue for future years. And so they've got the ability to pay off any funds. So let's say, what was my example here? All the fees and everything else. You ever read your utility bill? Like every street light has $1 and change every week, or I'm sorry, every month that you have to pay for, that kind of stuff. Whoever you pay that to, let's say, a good example. Well, in this case, you're paying it to the utility company, but the utility company might farm this out to whomever, maybe a subcontractor. They're going to put that in a certain fund, right? Internal service fund. I use my wife's examples a lot of times too. She's the research analyst at Osceola County Jail. Formerly, however, she was a manager over one of the programs, the inmate print shop, wherever they go in, they make forms, they make them for nonprofit organizations, for other government agencies, whatever. The government agency says, hey, we're out of this particular form, for whatever their purpose is. They would go to the print shop, say, have this form printed up for me. I want, 1,000 of them. I want a case or whatever. Here's how much money it costs. Well, that money goes into, they write a check, or there'd be an internal transfer somehow. So basically, you're just keeping track of that money within the existing accounts of the agency. See what I'm saying? So let's say the jail has a bank account. Well, some of it goes to programs, some of it goes to the cafeteria, some of it goes to laundry, whatever. They just have to keep it's still in the same bank account. They just have to keep track of it internally. So give me a second here. I'm actually reading the slides, just so everything that I'm telling you right now is available online. Okay, fiduciary funds. The first one is pension trust fund. Anything that you're putting aside, like I'm an employee of the state of Florida, I actually have a retirement fund. So what I do is I set aside a little money, state of Florida matches it, and then some, and that all goes into an investment account. They suck that away, or they invest it, whatever, and so that way, whenever 100 years from now, whenever I retire, that money's supposed to be there, theoretically. Let's just keep our fingers crossed. Investment portfolio. Okay. This one we'll discuss in a lot greater detail whenever it comes time to cover cash management on one of our future, I think it's the first module after the midterm. Let's say you work at the DMV, driver's license place, the county tax collector. They get in truckloads of money every day. People come down there, they'll come down with a check or with cash or whatever. What are these people supposed to do? They don't want to just sock it in their pillowcase. That would not be fiscally responsible. What they want to do is they want to invest those funds for whatever time. And so that way you're making interest, even if it's for a week or 2 weeks or whatever, you're making that money because you are a steward over the public coffers. The citizenry are expecting you to take good care of their money and to make the most of it, so that way, you're not wanting to get rich, but what you are wanting to do is be responsible. Okay, we'll talk about that more during the cash management module. But the investment portfolio, there are a lot of different instruments, and just like accounting, I'm not going to teach you how to be an investment manager either. But a lot of us have heard of like the 60-day CD or the 90-day CD or whatever. All kinds of different instruments you can find at your banks. Well, so in other words, you can obligate your funds for designated, predetermined period of time. So that way you go, okay, I know rent's due at such and such a time. I know my car payments for my fleet of vehicles is due such and such. Well, so until then, I can invest my money, get my money out a week before, boom, pay my bill, everybody's happy, right? So that's how that's supposed to work. The investment portfolio, sock away that money in a particular fund, so that way you can manage that better. Private purpose fund. I've got the picture of the little baby's hand there. That is indicative of payments to, well, you've got alimony, you've got child support, things like that, where, there are actual accounts that go for a private purpose. And they are, if you've, I don't know this firsthand, just saying I've been married for 33 years, but I know people have been divorced. I know people have to pay child support, things like that. They pay the money to the state, and then the state turns around and pays it to the other party. That way the state can manage it. But in the meantime, the state has to know this is how much money this person is paid. So that's where you get that private purpose trust fund. Agency funds. Okay, I've got on this particular slide, Seminole County with an arrow down to Sanford. Well, let's say you're a resident of Seminole County. You pay your money to the county tax collector. Well, if you live in Sanford, there might be money that's due to Sanford. So the county collects it, and then, it's like a pass-through to Sanford. So that way you're not having to pay Sanford, you're not having to pay this. It's one collection point, so one repository. And that's it as far as the funds. I will try to get you something else with regards to the types of accounting and everything else that pertains to this chapter. All right, till then.